This is the complete opposite of his cousin Hazith, who can only be described as all style, no substance. His life revolves around indulgence, spending recklessly, partying nonstop, and being completely uninterested in college or helping with his uncle's business. It's almost as if he doesn't realize that his uncle's family has been supporting him all along, covering all his needs. But Hazith is a different kind of character, living in his own world, seemingly oblivious to the effort and sacrifices of those around him. Hello and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another chilling real-life story that will leave you stunned. This time, the story comes from Ampera city in Sri Lanka's eastern province. Known as one of the country's largest rice producers, this region thrives thanks to its highly efficient irrigation systems. But behind this agricultural success lies a dark tale. A young man who was raised and cared for by his uncle from childhood ends up betraying that family in the worst way imaginable. What starts with money troubles, a hedonistic lifestyle, and unchecked greed unravels into a shocking tragedy, exposing a long-buried secret that changes everything. What really happened in this twisted story? Stick around as we unpack the full details. Before we jump into the story, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with your friends. Now let's dive in. This is the story of a young man named Hazith, born in 1999. Life was blissful for him as a child. He was the center of his parents' world, spoiled with love and everything he ever wanted. But tragedy struck when his parents died in a car accident, and Hazith's world was turned upside down. However, he didn't stay alone for long. His uncle, Mr. Kavindu, stepped in to raise him, giving him the same attention and care his parents once had. Hazith grew up to be a handsome, trendy young man, always in tune with what was cool and popular. But he also had a rebellious streak. He was mischievous, hard to control, and often pushed boundaries. Maybe it was his way of demanding even more attention from his uncle and the rest of the family. Hazith was a university student in Ampera city, a lively place where he spent most of his time. Now, Hazith was an only child, but his uncle Kavindu had a daughter named Sayumi, born in 2001. Sayumi was not just beautiful. She was smart, well-loved, and the apple of her father's eye. Kavindu, at 45 years old, was a highly respected figure in the community. He owned vast stretches of farmland, ran a successful real estate business, and even managed a car repair shop. His wife, Tharushi, was a dedicated homemaker, managing their household with grace. The family didn't just include Hazith, Sayumi, Kavindu, and Tharushi. Living with them was also Hazith's grandmother, Amaya, his late mother's mother, who was 65 years old. Together, the five of them lived under one roof. This family wasn't just wealthy. They were respected, educated, and kind-hearted. Sayumi, especially, was admired by everyone for her charm, intelligence, and friendly nature. They seemed like the perfect family from the outside. Sayumi was the kind of girl who made her parents proud. She was diligent, respectful, and genuinely interested in her uncle's business, especially the property sector. She was already serious about following in her father's footsteps. Her cousin Hazith, on the other hand, was the total opposite. He lived for style and status, not substance. His life was all about hedonistic pleasures, extravagant spending, partying, skipping classes, and showing zero interest in contributing to the family business. It seemed Hazith didn't realize or didn't care that his uncle's family had been supporting him entirely. They provided him with everything he needed, yet he remained ungrateful. Instead of showing gratitude, Hazith often clashed with his uncle, Kavindu. His attitude was likely a result of being overly pampered by his late parents, which left him with a sense of entitlement. His days revolved around scrolling through social media, attending morning meetups, and flaunting his uncle's wealth online. Naturally, this behavior infuriated Kavindu, who saw Hazith's potential being wasted. Eventually, Kavindu had enough. Frustrated by Hazith's laziness, recklessness, and constant spending, he decided to stop giving him a monthly allowance. Govindu hoped this would encourage his nephew to learn the value of money, grow more independent, and maybe even lend a hand with the family business. But the plan backfired. The lack of financial support only deepened the rift between Hazith and his uncle. Desperate for money, Hazith turned to his aunt, Tharushi. With teary pleas and convincing stories, claims of campus fees, research projects, internships, and more, he persuaded her to give him large sums of cash. Tharushi, who couldn't bear to see him struggle, often gave in. But when Govindu found out, it sparked heated arguments. Hazith started avoiding home altogether, which only made his aunt more upset. She continued secretly giving him money, hoping it would bring him back to the house. According to Sayumi, Hazith wasn't exactly using the money for school. Instead, he threw wild parties at expensive hotels, often footing the bill for his friends. He loved shopping for luxury goods, flaunting them on social media, and chasing dreams of becoming a celebrity. But his ambitions seemed more about showing off than actually achieving anything meaningful. One day in May 2020, Hazith returned to his uncle's house, demanding a large sum of money. His reasoning was vague, and whenever his uncle or aunt pressed him for details, his explanations spiraled into incoherent excuses. When they insisted on knowing why he needed the money, Hazith became defensive, accusing them of prying into his personal business. All he wanted was the cash, no questions asked. But Govindu wasn't one to hand over money without understanding its purpose. "What's it for? If you can't tell us, then you're not getting anything," his uncle said firmly. Frustrated, Govindu reminded Hazith that he needed to start earning his own money and stop living recklessly. He was convinced Hazith just wanted to throw more parties. Things escalated when Hazith blurted out that he wanted the money to get married and move far away. His uncle scoffed at the idea, responding bluntly, "If you want to get married, then go earn your own money. How can you expect to support a family if you can't even take care of yourself?" That was the final straw for Hazith. He flew into a rage, shouting at his uncle and demanding his inheritance. He claimed he was entitled to his parents' share and accused his uncle of keeping it from him. Govindu, unimpressed, stood his ground and made it clear that Hazith wasn't getting anything. "All the property titles, the house, and the family business assets are already legally secured for my daughter, Sayumi," Govindu stated, referring to his biological child. Hearing this only fueled Hazith's resentment. He slammed the door and retreated to his room, refusing to speak to anyone for days. His hatred for Sayumi grew, convinced she was scheming to take everything that rightfully belonged to him. Govindu, feeling the strain of the conflict, confided in his brother-in-law, Dhanuka. They both hoped Hazith would see reason and turn his life around. Dhanuka even tried to talk to Hazith, advising him to stop living extravagantly, respect his elders, and contribute to the family's efforts. But Hazith remained cold and distant, brushing off every piece of advice. By late May 2020, Hazith's anger had festered into something dangerous. He was consumed by resentment toward his uncle, aunt, cousin, and the entire household. Feeling alienated and antagonized, he began crafting a sinister plan, one that would eliminate everyone who stood in his way. For 2 weeks in early June 2020, Hazith had been plotting something truly sinister. But every time he tried to carry it out, his plans fell apart. Once, he intended to lace the family's food with insecticide, but they unexpectedly decided to eat out, leaving him alone at home. Another time, he took his uncle's gun and bullets, planning to carry out his act while everyone was asleep. However, a surprise guest showed up and stayed the night, forcing him to abandon the plan. By late June, Hazith asked his aunt for money under false pretenses, and she gave it to him. The next day, he used the cash to book a hotel room and invited a friend whose identity remains unknown. While at the hotel, Hazith shared his evil plans with this friend. The following day, the two returned to his family's house, peeking through the windows to assess the situation. Finding the house quiet and seemingly empty, they left and returned to the hotel. For 3 days, Hazith remained at the hotel, messaging several other friends and organizing a party for that night. Around noon, he returned home alone. His aunt was in the kitchen cooking, and his grandmother was outside watering the plants. When he entered, his aunt greeted him warmly and hugged him, saying she'd missed him after 4 days of absence. Hazith played along, exchanging pleasantries before heading upstairs to his room. There, he retrieved the gun he had hidden and prepared for his horrific plan. He quietly entered his cousin Sayumi's room, where she was still asleep. Without hesitation, Hazith covered her face with a bed sheet and fired a bullet directly into her head. To ensure she wouldn't resist, he smothered her with a blanket, though she had already passed instantly. The sound of the gunshot startled his grandmother, Amaya, who came upstairs to investigate. Hazith hid behind a cupboard, waiting. As soon as she stepped into Sayumi's room, he fired another shot, hitting her in the back of the head. She collapsed onto the floor. Next, Hazith called out to his aunt, asking her to come upstairs. She turned off the stove and rushed to see what was happening. Just like before, Hazith hid behind the cupboard and waited for her to step into Sayumi's room. As she entered, he fired a bullet into the back of her head. Now, all 3 women lay lifeless in Sayumi's room. Hazith locked the door and threw the key into the garden. He then moved downstairs to his uncle Kavindu's room. Kavindu was sitting at his desk, wearing headphones, and working on his laptop, completely unaware of the chaos upstairs. Hazith approached him quietly, aimed the gun at his forehead, and fired 3 shots in quick succession. Kavindu slumped over, lifeless. With the family eliminated, Hazith rummaged through the house. He broke into the safe using the combination Sayumi had once shared with him, stealing cash and jewelry. He locked his uncle's room, threw the key into the garden, and left the house. Before leaving, he locked the main door and took the key with him. Later that evening, Hazith returned to the hotel. As if nothing had happened, he hosted the party he had planned, drinking and celebrating with his friends late into the night. During the parties, Hazith couldn't shake off his anxiety. He was constantly on edge, worried he'd get caught. The morning after one of these parties, he came up with an idea and went to his brother Danuka's house. Acting distressed, he told Danuka, "Uncle Kavindu's house is eerily quiet. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I tried calling, but still no response. The lights are off, yet all the cars are in the garage and driveway." Concerned, Danuka and Hazith headed to Kavindu's house. The place seemed deserted. Danuka borrowed a ladder and told Hazith to climb up to the roof and peek through the upper windows. Hazith climbed up and, in a dramatic display, began screaming and crying, claiming he saw the lifeless bodies of their family inside. Danuka immediately called the police. When they arrived, the officers confirmed the grim scene. 4 family members had been killed. Hazith put on a convincing act, crying hysterically and drawing sympathy from everyone, including Danuka. Initially, the police suspected a robbery. The house was in disarray, the safe had been emptied, and furniture was overturned. But as they dug deeper, they noticed there were no signs of forced entry. The front door and windows were intact, suggesting the culprit was someone familiar to the family. Suspicion quickly shifted away from a random robbery. Unbeknownst to Hazith, the house's living room and entrance were equipped with CCTV. Although the cameras didn't capture the actual murders, the footage clearly showed Hazith as the last person to enter the house, locking the front door behind him. Adding to the evidence, his fingerprints and DNA were found throughout the crime scenes. Bloodstains were also discovered on the soles of Hazith's shoes. With mounting evidence, the police swiftly arrested the 20-year-old as the sole suspect in the brutal killing of his family. At first, Hazith denied everything, claiming he had discovered the bodies when he arrived and panicked, locking the door and fleeing. Later, he changed his story, saying he acted in self-defense. His narrative shifted daily, and the inconsistencies only strengthened the case against him. The weapon he used was never recovered, as Hazith admitted to discarding it in an unknown location. By early August 2020, after weeks of interrogation, Hazith finally confessed. He admitted that he deliberately killed his uncle's family out of resentment. His grudge stemmed from being denied money and being excluded from the inheritance, which was to be passed entirely to his cousin, Sayumi. Hazith also revealed another shocking motive. His girlfriend, who had been secretly staying at the hotel, was 5 months pregnant. She had threatened to report him to the police if he didn't take responsibility and marry her. Desperate and terrified of his uncle's reaction, Hazith kept this a secret. He feared being disowned and cut off financially, which fueled his violent plan. The authorities are still investigating whether Hazith's girlfriend had any involvement in the murders. Meanwhile, the court ruled that Hazith had premeditated the killing of his family and sentenced him to life imprisonment. What lessons can we learn from this story?